ในช่วงต้นของพิธีเปิดวันนี้เนี่ยอิงกี้ได้มีการจั่วหัวไปนิดนึงเรื่องของเว็บ3นะคะว่าเป็นคอนเซปต์ของงานในครั้งนี้เราได้เห็นมาเชื่อว่าหลายๆคนดูจากอายุแล้วเราน่าจะได้อยู่ตั้งแต่ยุคเว็บ1นะคะที่เป็นการแสดงผลอย่างเดียวไม่ได้มีอะไรซับซ้อนมากมายเลยนะคะมาสู่เว็บ2ในยุคปัจจุบันที่มีโครงสร้างพื้นฐานสำคัญก็คืออินเทอร์เน็ตแล้วนอกจากนั้นนะคะก็มีอินเทอร์แอคชั่นมีลูกเล่นต่างๆมากมายที่เราใส่เข้าไปให้กับในเว็บ2ของเรานะคะและตอนนี้เราทุกคนก็กำลังจะเปลี่ยนผ่านเข้าไปสู่ยุคเว็บ3นะคะซึ่งเราเชื่อกันว่าโครงสร้างพื้นฐานสำคัญเนี่ยเว็บ3มีโครงสร้างที่น่าสนใจแล้วก็มีความชาญฉลาดและมีลูกเล่นที่ทำอะไรได้อีกเยอะมากนะคะเราสามารถประยุกต์ใช้ได้กับอีกหลายภาคส่วนเลยนะคะเว็บ3โครงสร้างพื้นฐานสำคัญคืออะไรการพัฒนาโครงสร้างตั้งแต่อดีตจนถึงปัจจุบันดีขึ้นมากน้อยแค่ไหนการลงทุนในโครงการพื้นฐานที่เป็นอนาคตของเว็บ3ในตอนนี้เสี่ยงมากไปหรือไม่นะคะเราจะมาพูดคุยกันในเซสชันนี้สำหรับ The Past, Present and Future of Web3 Infrastructure วิวัฒนาการของโปรเจกต์ Web3 ในโลกคริปโตค่ะซึ่งตอนนี้นะคะวิทยากรทุกท่านก็อยู่บนเวทีกับเราเรียบร้อยแล้วนะคะ Please welcome Miss นัทธริยาวิทยาธนาเศรษฐ์ Head of Strategy and Incubation Alpha Venture DAO Mr. Calvin Chu, Core Builder Impossible Finance, Mr. Jacky Charanwattanakit, Senior Software Engineer at Nansen, Mr. Joshua Fu, Regional Director, Chainalysis, and Mr. Maxime Paul, Co-founder Atato. For this session, Mr. Nathariya will be the moderator, so I pass the mic to her. Please give them a big round of applause.
Hi, thanks everyone for joining our session, The Past, Present and Future of Web3 Infrastructure. But before we got into the weeds of what is Web3, I'd like to just ask one of our panelists to explain what exactly is Web3. Maybe Max, you can share your perspective on what exactly is Web3. Is it the same as blockchain? And why is it a trend right now? Why people are talking about Web3 at the moment?
Yes, and hello everyone. And yeah, I think that's the reason why we are here, right? So just very briefly, what is Web 1, right? Maybe a lot of people are too young in this audience to remember, but back in the 90s, early 2000, Web 1 was very static websites. So basically, you could just interact with the company owning it, and that's it. And Web 2, it was still what we have now. It's basically social media, e-commerce, and people interacting to each other through protocol, but also through companies. So extremely successful to bring billions of people into the internet, but mostly free. And you know that when the product is free, well, you are the product. So basically, you were giving your data to those big companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook, and so on. So very good services, very good user experience, but people realize, okay, that we can't continue this way. We need to have a new way of interacting to each other with a trustless environment. And someone called it the Web 3. Actually, I think it was Gavin Wood back in 2014 at the beginning of Ethereum. And so what is Web 3? It's basically an internet which is what we call decentralized. So people interact with each other through a protocol. And in this protocol, there is native currencies. And this is what we call crypto. So why is it great and why are we excited about it and why we are here today is because for the first time, basically, you are retaining your personal information. You share what you want to share and you interact with everybody in a trustless way. So it might be a bit technical, but the thing is that for the first time, you will have no companies, but protocols who are going to give you access and you're going to decide if I share my data or not. So that's Web 3.
Awesome. So Web3 is decentralized internet where users control their own data, essentially.
Exactly.
So when you look at Web 1 to Web 2, right, there's a lot of opportunities that's been created. For the Web 2 era, there's online applications, for example, Facebook or other social media that actually captures user data and monetize those user data. For Web 3, what is how is when the data is decentralized and no one controls the data, what is the actual value that's going to be created, and how is it going to change the way of living for people today? Maybe Calvin, you can take this question.
Yeah. I guess maybe I'll tell a small quick story. I guess I've been unbanked for basically my entire working career. So I think Maxime hinted at this with Web 1, that maybe I'm not familiar with anything ahead of Web 1.5. I'm only familiar with what's happened since. When I spent, I guess, almost 3 years working at Binance, I was really paid in crypto. I'm an American citizen, and it was quite hard for me to get even just simple bank accounts to be used. I couldn't call a taxi using any of the mobile apps because I had no working visa. And I think this is some of the world that I think we are now enabling with all the technologies that we have. That it doesn't matter where I'm from, where I grew up, what I studied, anything. That if I'm a citizen that wants to purchase a coffee or call a Bolt here, I should be able to freely transact. And I think tied to the point about kind of the trust, don't trust, verify, one of the other things is this borderless kind of payments, right? That's something that when you're able to have this technology that freely scales to allow any users to participate within this network, not just somebody that has been registered or kind of inside your system, that's something that allows for so much more freedom and access for people to participate in decentralized worlds as well.
Anyone else wanted to add on what are the new business opportunity do you think Web3 will create?
Maybe I'll just add one more point is not just openness to participation, but also equality, right? So, I mean, if you know in the traditional banking segment, they do look at how much money you bring, and then they decide on the interest rates in savings, right? So usually high net worth people actually get higher interest rates than people that are the common man on the street. But when you interact with a smart contract, right, that's going to be equality around. They don't really see the difference, and I think that's a tremendous opportunity to bring to many part of the unbanked people who actually have a very high threshold before they can enter the banking system. This allows them to enter it relatively easily, right? So I think equality is also a very important part that we bring. Yeah.
And very quickly, the thing that people have difficulty to grasp about Web3 is that there is new business that don't exist today. When we talk about NFT, for example, people had no idea that they could create NFT and get the value of it even 10 years ago. So I think we're going to be very surprised on the new business that are going to pop up in Web3.
How are we in this evolution towards Web3? How far along are we, and how far until we get to use this technology? Yeah. Feel free, Jackie, do you have any? How far along are we in this evolution of Web3 until we can actually use technology that's built on Web3?
Yeah, so I think we are still very early in the Web3 evolution right now, because actually each solution of the infrastructure that makes you use Web 3.0 is still still needs a lot of improvements, I think. Yeah. So as I'm working in a lot of querying the blockchain data kind of work at Nansen, specifically looking at the blockchain states like smart contracts and stuff. I think we still need a lot of improvements in our today infrastructure, because so for example, apart from writing data and sending transactions in blockchain, another key usage of the blockchain was to read data from it, to retrieve data from it. But then in order for you to actually read the data from the blockchain in a decentralized way, in the native way that everybody should use, you need to run your own node. You run your own blockchain node, and you need to download and store all the blocks, all the data in your own machine, and that is very, very expensive, and normal user wouldn't be able to put themselves into the blockchain network like they want to be. And on-chain data platform like us, need to charge a lot of money from the customer to pay for our service just to read the data from the blockchain. So yeah, but the good news is that we are seeing a lot of improvements in the blockchain node that lets you like join the blockchain network more easily and like with a lower cost. Yeah, so yeah, I think apart from like writing transaction and writing data into the blockchain, I think like the reading part is still what we are lacking of because and I think if we can improve in this space, people will be able to join the blockchain with a lower cost. Yeah.
And if I can add something, if you want to know how far we are, just the basic thing of sending crypto to someone else, the nightmare it is to copy an address and to panic because maybe you miss E or
You sent to the
what.
wrong address.
We're never going to have like millions of people onboarding in crypto if we don't already fix this user interface. So I think we are very, very early and we need a lot of improvement.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think if you look back, fax machine or TV, it took multi-decade to actually like come into, consumer-ready version. For blockchain, we're still like, very, very early. So from 2008, which is the year of the inception of Bitcoin till today, what has been, the most like the interesting like evolution of Web3 in your opinion? Particularly, what have we seen in terms of infrastructure development that has allowed that has improved the Web3 space so far in your view? Maybe Joshua, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, I think one of the key building blocks of Web3 will be the earlier evolution of cloud computing, right? So I think with the likes of Amazon and Google and Microsoft building very large cloud infrastructure, that kind of facilitates blockchain technology that really needs to run on a lot of computing power, and that's always going to be needed, right? But in terms of evolution, it really is going to be driven by the creativity of the new businesses that's going to come. And that's going to drive the need for these infrastructures to support. I give you an example, right? So there's a project in the US called Demo that basically allows you to capture data on your car. So how far you drive, what's your driving patterns and everything on it. And they basically tokenize that data and allow the users to own it, and then they can sell that data to companies that do research or design cars and things like that. And obviously, in order to support that infrastructure, that means that you need to have equipment on the cars, in the cars to capture that data and then to send it out. So I think the infrastructure is going to move as new businesses that we have never imagined before come into play. We have seen carbon credits tokenization as well, and then there's going to be infrastructure that needs to support that type. But I think it's going to be very exciting because we are just very early on in that stage, and people are just thinking of how I'm going to leverage Web3 to drive many this type of new businesses. Yeah.
If I can add on to that, I think one of the points that you mentioned was that innovation, and I think the biggest thing that's ever happened to this space, in my opinion, is smart contracts. Without smart contracts, a lot of this innovation, a lot of the ideas couldn't happen. And I think as an answer to the previous question of how early we are, I believe I'm the only one out of us four that all of our product is on-chain. And I think that shows how early we are in terms of adoption. There's so much infrastructure that these three guys coming from their teams have to build so that we have the ways for institutions, for other teams to come in and build everything, right? For us, where we see a lot of that kind of room for innovation is being able to use smart contracts to protect people rather than to obscure things, right? When you go on, even when you buy like electronics or something, maybe the company that you buy it from offers you like a buyback guarantee or best price, whatever, right? They have all these types of marketing things, but you have to kind of trust them, right? For us at Impossible, when people participate in a investment opportunity on Impossible's website, we can actually offer users buyback protection programs where the buyback is actually coded on chain. You don't have to take our word for it. You can check, you can, as Maxime mentioned earlier, you can verify it for yourself. And I think that's something that's incredibly powerful. Similar to what Jacky said, it still takes time or quote unquote cost for people to check all the things that are on chain, but at least there's an option to do so. In the business models, as Maxime mentioned earlier, that a lot of things have never been done before, that we don't even know what will be done next. But to us, the biggest kind of upside is that now there's that empty canvas for everyone to be able to draw, to be their own artist, whether it's an NFT artist or a smart contract artist, to create all the things that, in the future will be the businesses of tomorrow.
Awesome. Calvin, just to double click on that, smart contract helps you in terms of like users can get like guarantee for buyback, right, for their purchases. So that's one of the applications. Anything else on smart contracting that allows like what exactly for the smart contract allows for transparency and accessibility? Just to give a little bit more context to the people here.
Sure. I guess one other word that I personally really love is interoperability. Whether it's your NFTs that you can use in some other metaverse, or even if it's just the data that you maybe have become maybe a Nansen Connect user because you hold one of these NFTs, maybe it gives you access into other kind of chats or communities as well. That a lot of what is doable is because, as Jacky mentioned, the data is openly readable on any blockchain. So other people can build business logic on top of anything that you do, right? So maybe, for example, if Nansen gives out a POAP NFT for people that came to one of their alpha chats or live streams on YouTube, that user maybe is something that I want to do a promotion for our launchpad, that perhaps then I will say, oh, these guys get a better price. So actually, I would kind of debate what you mentioned earlier about blockchain being something that's purely equal. I will also say that is also the data is so open that I can create things that are maybe not equal but targeted. So this goes to what we talked about owning your own data as well. But also, if the data is open, I don't need to kind of wait for you to decide if I want to give some sort of promotion to Bored Apes holders or whatever it might be, because all this information is available out there. So in terms of this type of interoperability, fundamentally speaking, as long as we use this power, I would say it is a power and a privilege, but it's also something that we should not abuse, right? If we are using this as a way to just spam people and send people, stupid NFTs, whatever it might be, it is a waste of energy, time, and people's most valuable resources, right? But if we do use these things to give people targeted things of what they want, maybe when you shop on Amazon or other websites, they give you the suggested, you might also like X. These are the types of things that I think in the future, all of the guys up here, we want to serve the users at the end of the day. And so if we are able to use this information to really help users, that's ultimately the challenge that's put forth to us.
Got it. So with blockchain, we have this access to tremendous amount of data that can be read from anyone that has access to it. And with smart contract, you have the ability to execute logic that utilizes such data. Going forward, what do you think is going to be the key infrastructure that we need to drive this technology forward? Maybe Jacky, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. So I still wanna like emphasize on what I'm talking about. So right now, the key infrastructure for Web3, we have a lot of like improvements in terms of like scalability, for example, like layer 2 or the improvements of like Oracle or improvements of like sharding, the Ethereum, the merge and things like that. We have a lot of like improvements in terms of sending transaction and like scaling to support more transactions. But for me, as I'm working a lot like on reading the data, we still think that we still need some improvements on how the blockchain nodes operate. So how we can run and operate the blockchain node by ourselves. So right now it costs you a lot, and that makes like normal users wouldn't be able to like run their own blockchain node and then use their own data. So they need to put their trust into into another centralized entities. Yeah, that will queries the blockchain data for them. So I think like right now when we are saying that we are in the Web3, we are querying the blockchain data, we are actually not using the decentralized data like that. So right now I think we need to improve a lot on the how can we let normal people join the blockchain network with a lower cost. Yeah, and yeah, sure.
Yeah, I just want to add, actually, you're totally right. It's extremely expensive to use blockchain today. But what we do at Atato Custody, basically, our only mission is to bring people to blockchain securely. Because today, I mean, you use blockchain, you have cryptos, right? You have a MetaMask, a Ledger, and I use it every day. I love it, but actually, it's horrible. If we want to have millions of people to onboard into blockchain, it needs to be cheaper, as you are saying, but also it needs to be able for anyone to interact with blockchain securely and in an easy way. So since we don't have this infrastructure yet, and we are working to have one, until we have it, it's going to be very difficult to onboard millions of people into blockchain.
So by access, you mean both from on the person who writes data or a node validator, right? And also people who transact using blockchain. The infrastructure that would allow that to happen is still a lot of development that needs to be done on both fronts. So let's move up from infrastructure level to applications a little bit more. Over the past cycle, we've seen a lot of developments in decentralized finance, or what we call DeFi, and also NFT, and later on GameFi as well. With the recent crash of centralized entities such as FTX, should we revisit what is the importance of having financial system on the blockchain? Kelvin, what do you think? Is DeFi dead, or are you still bullish on DeFi? And what's your view on building a decentralized financial system on blockchain?
Yeah, I think now more than ever, maybe DeFi becomes even more important when some of the biggest, I would say, centers of trust within this entire space, just disappears overnight, right? For those of you that maybe don't know, actually, before Alpha, I think many of the Alpha teammates were actually at Band Protocol, one of the oracles. So I think we were talking about also how to bring that next wave. When Band was a project I got to due diligence at Binance Research, one of the things that caught our attention was they were actually doing sports betting oracles. So they were bringing in information from like ESPN and all these different sports things over to on-chain results. And so, for us, whenever you see anything in the real world right now that you have to trust other intermediaries, like what Jacky mentioned, that's something that I think that now more than ever, the technology that we have, maybe it's not fully there yet, but at least we've seen the proof of concepts to be able to bring more use cases, right? So that when, for example, Alpha which was also a Binance Launch Pool project, we were able to see so many people use DeFi for the first time, start to stake stable coins in, use things like Iron Bank as well. And I think this is really a beautiful thing to see, whether or not you like certain chains or not. I know there was another panel about Bitcoin maximalism, but I think something that's very important as well is just giving an opportunity for anyone in the world to use smart contracts, right? I would say that in my research at Binance in 2020, in the calendar year of 2020, I spent 400 ETH in gas fees, trying every single project in the entire space.
That's a lot of money wasted.
Binance didn't reimburse me for this, so yeah. But it's something that I think is I was privileged enough to see all these things happen within the space at that time, so that we could bring all that knowledge over to Impossible and to be able to give it to all the users so that they don't have to pay all the tuition in learning about all the things that happen within the space, right? But if we really can, lower the barriers to entry, have so many more chains. I think there are many chains that are sponsors here today as well, including, Ara, one of our portfolio projects. But there's so many more options today for all of the users out there to be able to try and use these products for themselves. I don't think we'll ever be able to learn from any of the mistakes or any of the pains that we see in terms of large players going down in the space, unless if we really try and use these different products ourselves. You don't know how sturdy a lifeboat is until you get in it, right? So for us, if we can really try to educate ourselves, educate our friends in all the products that are out there, I think it's one of the most beautiful things that we can be forced to do in some of the aftermath of these types of events.
Thank you. That's really great. Alpha is also in DeFi, so I'm I'm still bullish on DeFi. But Max, since you're providing custody solution for customers, what do you think is going to be the next wave of things in DeFi that's going to emerge in the next bull cycle?
Yeah, I think DeFi has been in the shadow of NFT and GameFi during the last bull run. And I think really DeFi is the sleeping giant of blockchain. The reason is that today, what do you do with crypto? Well, you invest and you trade if you are a trader. But if you're an institution or a company who want to have a bit of your reserve in Bitcoins or pay your employees in USDCs or your providers, if you have some capitals in coins, what do? If you're a company, you are not going to buy NFT or very unlikely. So what you are going to do, you are looking at protocols to basically invest your money and get a return on it. So institution, what we are seeing at Atato Custody is they would like to secure their crypto and use DeFi. That's the only thing that they want to do. For the moment, it's going to evolve, but basically I think that the next bull run, if we have it in the next 2 years, it's going to be a wave of institution having some crypto, stable coins who want to actually lend them. And I think DeFi has been in a bad news in a way for because of CeFi product that we have seen, Celsius, Voyagers, and BlockFi. People mistake DeFi and those centralized entities. Now they realize that it wasn't really DeFi, but I think it's going to be DeFi who brings institution into crypto.
Does Atato support MetaMask institutional?
Sorry?
Do you guys support MetaMask institutional?
So we have another solution which looks like it, yeah.
Great. So I think you brought a really good point that CeFi is actually the point of risk for institutions to access DeFi. What is the role of on-chain analytics or the tools to help read data on the blockchain in providing transparency? And if you look at in the future, right? Let's say we have more DeFi applications coming up, more people utilizing these applications. Is there a way for us to access DeFi in a way that's transparent and have a better risk management tool? Maybe Joshua first.
Yeah, I think with all these things that's been happening, a lot of focus is on on-chain data and how can it help prevent, So I think the industry has to obviously do a much better job at getting this data and using it in a much more efficient way. And we're just learning, right? Because the data is there, right? On-chain data is there. Every transaction's information is there. But sometimes it can overwhelm. And because especially when we talk about finance, if you look at your traditional money, you're not going to track every movement of a dollar, right? That's not there. But suddenly you give that information to the central bank, to regulators, to everyone. They're like, whoa, this is way too much data. They don't know what to do with it. But that doesn't mean that it's bad, right? In the same way, when we talk about DeFi, blockchain data works, right? It's one of the most brilliant invention ever, and it's going to power a lot of innovation. And so in the same way with the data, what we need to do is to ensure that, companies like Chainalysis are looking at all this information and putting it to good use where we can protect people, we can identify certain risks, certain threats that are happening, even in the area where, especially when we talk about smart contracts, I believe like what Jacky said, a lot of things will be built on smart contracts, but also the fact that smart contracts can fail if they are not created properly. And once they fail, then the element of trust is going to break, right? And I think that's also a very big issue. So, you talk about infrastructure. Actually, one of the key components is trust, right? It's not a physical infrastructure, but it's that element of trust. So we also need to make sure that when we talk about security, it's that element of trust. Make sure that there's proper audits, proper due diligence in auditing these smart contracts. Because if we have a case of a DeFi protocol that fails, a large one, because of vulnerability in smart contracts, then the people are going to fear, right? How can I trust these smart contracts? So that's one element that I think when we talk about security, we always need to keep our minds on. We need to make sure that we do a much better job at that. Yeah.
Jackie, what's the role of Nansen or any analytics tool in helping risk management?
So for us, like the on-chain data analytic tools, we are not only providing transparency on the blockchain because blockchain itself is already transparent, but the problem is that blockchain is transparent in the sense that it's not human readable. So like blockchain data are in bits and bytes and a long string of addresses, and our job is to like translate and help people like comprehend and translate those data into a more readable form, either by like visualizing it or labeling it. And then the next step after that is that as an on-chain analytics tools, we need to, after they know what is happening in the blockchain, we will help them make use of those data, either by like protecting them from being harmed in the blockchain ecosystem or in a maybe like a fraudulent transaction, things like that. So we transform raw data into a valuable information. So like in Nansen, we used to say that to surface the signal and then create winners in the future of finance. And I think that is like a really cool role for the on-chain analytic tools like us.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that. I think what Jackie's hinting at is the future that we want to be is a much more proactive one rather than a reactive one, right? I think this statement resonates with all of you guys because, the business of custody, we want to get in front of any of the risks to protect users' money, right? With chain analysis to make sure that if there are any hacks or stuff that we can get in front of it, right? To see the trends of, for example, the wallets of these exchanges, the proof of reserves, right? That's what Nansen's been able to do as well, right? And then for us as a launchpad, we want to get in front of the trends to build these dashboards on Dune, Flipside, Covalent, Nansen, so on and so forth, to see the next sectors that users will want to invest in. We're really lucky to see some of the metaverse games guilds. So we are actually investors in GuildFi here as well, which helped us even get to this conference. And so, it's something that gives us a lot of opportunity to see what's that next step. And I think for all of us, we do want to be ahead of what is coming. It's not going to be an easy road with all the market setbacks, the macro conditions, all the risks that we hear about all day. But for us, if we're constantly in the mindset of building our products together in that forward looking, I think that's going to be the difference between making it wag me, right?
I really love that. The future is a more proactive one than a reactive one. And with every setback, we learn and we try to improve based on the technology that we have and we're building on. Any last words on what you guys are bullish about for the future of Web3 before we end the session?
Yeah, in 20 seconds, I think social media on blockchain is going to be major in the next bull run because people are tired to give their information to social media and get the publicity advertisement of what you just talked about with your friend. So I think look at it, there is some very cool protocol, Lens protocol and so on, so social media for me.
Well, I think events like this really give testament to where the industry is still growing. Continue to build, continue to collaborate. I think this industry will only do better with more collaboration and partnerships like this.
Yeah, for me, I think instead of like big ideas or new ideas or new complex ideas about like decentralized finance, I think one thing that we still need to improve is like the UX of users that are joining the DeFi space, because like right now users of DeFi are still the same user as last year. We don't have any new user as much as what we want. So I think we need to improve a lot of like UX in order to join in the Web3 space. Yeah.
Yeah, I would add to that, especially education. I think there's still a lot of things that we do without doing all of our research, and I think that's something that, as you can see, can really hurt a lot of users when they don't do that. And so by utilizing the tools like Nansen, trying out all these other kind of on-chain surveillance tools, as well as understanding what custody can provide us. I think this is what we want to see in the space is a maturity level that's not yet there yet, but it's something that we're all working towards in each of our own regards.
Thank you so much for summarizing the session for me, Calvin. That was perfect summary. I think everyone on this panel is working towards creating a better experience and better applications on Web3, whether it be on the custody side, helping people interact and transact on the Web3 space, whether it be the risk management or analytics tool, or preventing hacks for the applications that are built on the blockchain, or lastly, like building new companies that are building applications or protocols to allow more people to make use of this technology. So I think, or incubating or building DeFi projects at Alpha as well. So I think, thank you so much for joining the panel today. And we are still bullish on Web3 and DeFi applications, and we're excited to build a more sustainable, transparent, and accessible space for anyone to use the technology. So thanks for joining the panel.
Thank you.
ค่ะขอเสียงปรบมือดังๆนะคะ Thank you so much all of the guest speakers